So this is a chart that shows a side-by-side comparison of the Hoffman and the Ehrlich reagent, both of which test for indoles, which are usually your class of psychedelics that are tryptamines. But Hoffman also tests for other psychedelics. Ehrlich only tests for things that have an indole ring on them, which are not always tryptamines, they're not always psychedelics. But when you're doing reagent drug checking to check for adulterants or misrepresentations of substances, usually this is enough. So a really common application of using the Ehrlich reagent is to test for LSD. There are some things that don't test at all on an Ehrlich reagent, which, as you can see here, the 25 series of drugs have no reaction. Every other thing that's a tryptamine and indole has a reaction. It all turns to the same purple color. And then, like, again, there's no reaction on these 2C family of chemicals, which are, also psychedelics, or the DO family of chemicals, which are also psychedelics with their phenethylamines, which are usually psychedelic amphetamines, and definitely not tryptamines, and definitely have different effects. So, if you are testing for LSD and you get no reaction, basically you're like, okay, there is no LSD on this blotter. There might be something else, but there's definitely no presence of LSD here. The Hoffman reagent gives you more information. It can distinguish between LSD versus DMT. It can distinguish DMT or LSD from 5-MeO-DMT. It doesn't give a reaction in bones either, except for 25D and 25B. 2CB gives no reaction as well. Harmaline, listen, I can sit here and go through this list and be like, oh, it differentiates between these things. However, this is why I think this is unnecessary to own the Hoffman reagent. It's not telling you useful information, like cool, it changes different colors, but it's not telling you anything that you care about. You bought blotter. Is it LSD? Yes, it's fucking LSD, most likely, if it turns purple on an Ehrlich reagent. Psilocybin is not going to be on a blotter. Psilocin is not going to be on a blotter. DMT is not going to be on a blotter. 5-MeO-DMT is not going to be on a blotter. 25 INBCB LMLP could be on a blotter, but it doesn't fucking react. Harmaline is not even, like, harmaline is literally like a plant-based substance. Like, that's what they put, that's what has the MAOI that they mix for ayahuasca. Like, why the fuck would you even be testing for harmaline? Like, what are you looking for? What are you testing? Regular people aren't looking for that type of shit. 2C chemicals are fucking testable with Mecchi and Marquis reagents primarily. If and they wouldn't be on a blotter. The active dose for the majority of these substances are such that they would never fit on a blotter in an active dose. Even if someone tried to put it on a blotter, it would just be ineffective paper with just a waste of fucking drugs that won't do shit unless, I don't know, maybe you eat like 20 of them, which is like still pointless. There's absolutely no fucking point in that. 5-MeO-DMT is fucking bufantine. Like, that's what comes from bufotope. Like, you can get it in a synthetic version, but that's a smokable thing. That's not going on the fucking blotters. Like, Hoffman is pointless. Like, there's a reason why it was created, but in the context of drug checking, it's fucking pointless. At what point do you need to know the difference between DMT and DXM? If you're having the fucking try to figure out those two things, there are other reagents that got it covered for you. If it doesn't turn purple on Ehrlich, you know you're not dealing with an indole. If it's giving you no reaction and you test it with other reagents, DXM can be tested. 25, B, D, I, etc. can be tested with other reagents. If you don't know what kind of mushrooms you have, you're in a ton of shit. Because either you're eating regular mushrooms, like bon appetit, or you might be dealing with something way more poisonous or contains a deliriant type substance that you're going to be like hallucinating on, like fucking fly agaric mushrooms, which look wildly different from like, you know, the golden teachers, you know, the psilocybe cubensis or whatever, you know, like the mycologists that can tell a difference. There's like visual cues to mushrooms that you don't fucking need to put a reagent on it. Like, I've done it before and I've had it react to Ehrlich, but that was out of boredom. Sometimes it doesn't even work because it has a bunch of cellulose in it because it's a plant. So it's like, it can't even find the psilocybin in it. It's just like, I don't know, it's absorbed into the fucking plant and I can't eat this part of the mushroom. Hoffman reagent, waste of time, waste of money. Just get an Ehrlich reagent if these are types of chemicals you're testing for. Primarily if you're interested in LSD or 4-ACO-DMT, which doesn't even show up on this particular chart. I'm assuming it's because the Hoffman doesn't test for it, but the Ehrlich does. 4-ACO-DMT is as close as you're going to get to something like a synthetic psilocybin. The 4-HO chemicals too, those are all like research chemicals that most people don't know about anyway. And for most people who are ordering them, they're probably not going to be adulterated because they're not common enough for anyone to particularly care about adulterating those obscure ass chemicals. And like at the bottom of this chart, which can't be seen with my shoulder, you know, this is the DO stuff. I believe that Hoffman also tests for DXM. DXM isn't fucking cough syrup. It's in like Robitussin and Delsum, like, you know, like, you're probably not gonna come across it with like psychedelics that you're testing for in these categories. It used to be like extracted and put into shitty ass, you know, MDMA, like ecstasy presses back in the day. But like, this stuff, like, who the fuck needs to test some of these things? Like, if you are like that unsure about what you have and you only have these two reagents at your disposal, you're kind of fucked anyway. Like, you should be working with more reagents if you're coming across mystery substances potentially. You know, if your source is that unreliable, then like you've got bigger problems.